"Get out, you stray." She said it in front of everyone. 40 wolves, stone courtyard, not one of them moved. 12 years Tabitha had ground their herbs before dawn, packed their wounds, sat with their sick through the night when no one else would. 12 years of work that went into every body that healed in that pack. 60 seconds, that's how long it took the Luna to erase all of it. Contaminated supplies, wolfless, a stray who never belonged, expelled by sundown. In this world, expelled by sundown means dead by morning. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She stood in the center of that courtyard, hands loose at her sides, and she counted every single wolf who said nothing. This is the story of what happens next. Every wolf who stayed silent, every wound she healed that they've already forgotten, and the king who walked into that courtyard and saw exactly what they didn't. Stay with her. She counted them. Now watch what she does about it.
The sharp scent of crushed juniper burned her nose as the jar shattered at her feet. Tabitha did not flinch. She had learned long ago that flinching invited more. She looked at the broken clay, at the scattered juniper berries rolling across the stone floor of the healing hut, at the spreading dark stain of remedy oil soaking into the cracks. 3 hours of work gone. Then she looked up at Luna Mari's veilwood. The Luna's face was flushed, her silk robes were immaculate, her finger was already pointing. "You ruined them." Luna Mari's voice carried through the hut's open doorway and into the courtyard beyond. She had not lowered it, she never lowered it. "Every sacred supply in this hut reeks of your contamination." Tabitha kept her voice even. "The juniper was sealed correctly this morning. I checked the wax on every jar before the 4th bell. If there is spoilage, it came before I arrived. I can show you the records I keep, the dates, the measurements, and the sealing method I used, which Elder Elric approved 3 seasons ago." "Don't," the word hit like a slap. "Don't stand there with your healer's tongue and explain yourself to me." Tabitha said nothing. The hut was not large. A single room of dried herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters, stone shelves of tinctures and wrapped poultices, a workbench worn smooth by years of grinding and measuring. It smelled of warm beeswax, dried root, and pine resin. It smelled like every hour Tabitha had given to this pack without being asked to give it back. Luna Mari stepped forward, her jeweled slippers crunched over the juniper berries. "Get out, you stray." Her voice did not rise, it sharpened. "This pack does not shelter useless wolves." The words landed in the room like something physical. Tabitha felt the air change, felt the 2 pack members who had followed the Luna inside go very still. She recognized them, Dana from the Weaving Quarter and old Ferris who ran the supply gate. Both of them were staring at the floor now. Neither spoke. She had been called stray before. The word was not new. It had followed her since the day she arrived at Silver Ridge at 12 years old, hollow-cheeked and carrying nothing but a charred silver pendant around her neck. The pack healer had taken her in because she needed hands small enough to pack wounds tightly, not because she was welcome, not because she belonged. 12 years. 12 years of grinding roots before dawn, of sitting with wounded wolves through the night because no one else would, of being passed over for ceremony and recognition, while her work went into every body that healed in this pack. "I will not leave without my tools," Tabitha said. Luna Mari's blinked. Whatever she had expected, tears, collapse, and apology, it was not that. "What did you say to me?" "My tools." Tabitha moved to the workbench and began gathering her pestle, her measuring cloth, her folded herb notes. Her hands were steady. She had learned to make them steady. "They are mine. I made them or purchased them with my own wages. I will take them." If you feel your chest tightening right now, if you are already furious on Tabitha's behalf, follow this channel, because what happens in the next 6 chapters will make today's injustice worth every second of waiting. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever stayed silent when someone humiliated you just to survive? "Leave them." Luna Mari stepped in front of the workbench. "Everything in this hut belongs to Silver Ridge, including what you brought in." "That is not pack law." "I am the law of this pack." The Luna's chin lifted. Her voice had gone very quiet now, the dangerous kind of quiet that meant an audience was near. Everything you have touched is contaminated. I will have it all burned and replaced. Burned. The word reached something cold in Tabitha's chest. Not fear, not exactly, something more like the recognition of a pattern she had always known was waiting. From outside, voices filtered in. The courtyard was not empty. It rarely was at midday, when pack members moved between the training yard and the meal hall. She could hear them pausing, could hear the shift in conversation that meant people were turning to look at the healing hut's open door. Luna Maris heard it too, and her posture changed, something in her shoulders that said she had found her audience. Bring her out, the Luna said to the two behind Tabitha. Ferris wouldn't meet her eyes when he moved to take her arm. Dana made a small sound, almost a protest, and then swallowed it. Tabitha did not struggle. Struggling would make her look guilty and give them a reason to be rougher. She walked. The courtyard opened around her, stone ground worn smooth by decades of boots, the central platform used for pack announcements, the high walls of the surrounding buildings. 20 wolves, perhaps more, were already watching. Maury was stopping as they passed. Tabitha stood straight. She kept her hands visible. She did not look at the ground. Luna Maris stepped up onto the platform edge, not the full height, just enough to be seen above the crowd. This woman, she gestured at Tabitha without looking at her directly, as though she were a stain being pointed out on a wall, has been contaminating Silver Ridge's sacred healing supplies. For how long we cannot say. Every remedy this pack has consumed in recent months must now be questioned. A murmur moved through the crowd. Some faces were uncertain. A few were already hardening with the look of people who needed someone to blame. Tabitha kept her voice in her throat. There was no point speaking now. She had learned that too. An accused woman who argued before witnesses looked guilty. She would wait. She would find the moment when argument had weight, and she would use it then. Elder Elric appeared at the edge of the gathering. He was old and slow-moving, but his eyes were sharp, and they went directly to her face, a question in them. She answered it with the smallest shake of her head. Not now. He stopped where he was. She arrived at this pack with nothing, Luna Maris continued. No name, no family, no wolf taken in by charity, and this is how she repays it. The crowd pressed closer. Tabitha watched their faces, not with fear but with the careful attention she usually gave to wounds, reading them, measuring what she was dealing with. Most of them she had treated. The woman near the gate wall, with the pale scar along her jaw, Tabitha had sutured that wound closed 4 winters ago after a border dispute. The young male to the left who kept looking at his feet had come to the healing hut twice this year alone, with a shoulder injury he hadn't wanted the Luna to know about. Old Harwick at the back had 3 of Tabitha's tinctures in his home right now. None of them spoke. She understood hierarchy was not kindness, it was weight, and weight pressed down. Expel her, Luna Maris said, before nightfall. At the edge of the courtyard, just arriving, Tabitha noticed, through the pack's main gate, were strangers. They moved differently. She noticed it immediately, the way she noticed anything that didn't fit the pattern of a room. A group of 6 or 7 in road-worn travelling leathers, some with armour-bearing markings she didn't recognise at this distance. They had stopped just inside the gate. They were watching. One of them stood at the front of the group. Tall, dark-haired, still in a way that seemed chosen rather than accidental. He had not announced himself or moved toward the gathering, just stood with his arms loose at his sides, watching the courtyard scene with eyes that gave nothing away. Something in the air changed when Tabitha noticed him, though she could not have said what exactly. A pressure, a faint warmth behind her sternum, like standing too close to a hearth. She filed it away and ignored it. She had more immediate problems. "This is a false accusation," she said. Her voice was clear and carried across the stone courtyard without effort. "The supplies were sealed correctly and can be verified. I request a formal investigation before any expulsion takes place." Luna Maris turned to look at her for the first time since they'd walked outside. Her expression was something close to amusement. "Request denied." 2 pack guards stepped forward. "If you are watching this and thinking, someone needs to stop this, then stay with this story because the next chapter begins at the exact moment everything shifts. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Tabitha's place?" The distant sound of a royal horn cut through the air, 3 sharp, ascending notes that Tabitha had never heard in person, but recognised from every pack ceremony she had ever attended. "Royal visitors." The guards stopped moving. Luna Mari's face went very carefully still. And from the gate, unhurried, the tall dark-haired stranger began to walk toward the center of the courtyard. Stones scraped beneath her boots as they forced her into the open. Tabitha did not stumble, she made sure of that. The courtyard was fuller now. Word had moved through Silver Ridge the way it always did, pack instinct pulling wolves toward disruption before they consciously understood why they were walking in that direction. She counted faces without meaning to. 40, perhaps, Maury arriving at the edges. 40 witnesses to whatever Luna Mari's intended to make of her. She kept her shoulders square and her chin level. Not defiance, she knew better than to perform defiance before a crowd that had not yet decided what it believed. Just steadiness. The same steadiness she held when a wound was worse than expected and the patient was watching her face for permission to panic. Don't give them the reaction, give them the stillness. Luna Mari's had taken the platform fully now, both feet on the raised stone, silk robes arranged, voice already gathering itself for projection. Silver Ridge, the Luna let the name land before continuing. What stands before you today is not a healer. It is a liability, a wolfless stray who has been permitted to handle the sacred remedies of this pack, remedies that touch your children, your warriors, your wounded, and who has repaid that permission with contamination and carelessness. Murmurs, shifting feet. Tabitha scanned the crowd again. Not for sympathy, she was past expecting that, for information, for what she was actually dealing with. That was when she found them. They had positioned themselves at the courtyard's eastern edge, neither pressing forward into the crowd nor retreating to the gate. The royal travellers, 6 of them, in riding leathers and armour marked with the Northern Territorial crest, a detail she could confirm now at this distance. They watched the platform proceedings with the particular stillness of people trained to observe. The tall one was at the front. Up close or closer, at least 20 feet away, he was more present than she had registered from the hut doorway. His dark hair was tied back. A scar crossed his left eyebrow. He had not spoken, had not moved toward the platform, had not done anything except stand with his arms loose and his eyes on the scene unfolding before him. The wolves nearest to the royal group were standing differently. Shoulders angled away, feet slightly wider, the involuntary body language of wolves near a dominant they hadn't yet been formally introduced to, instinct overriding social performance. Tabitha noticed this and set it aside, information not comfort. She arrived at this territory with no family, no record, no wolf. Luna Mari's voice rose. We do not know what she is, we do not know where she came from. We have given her 12 years of shelter and rank, and she has used that time to work quietly among our sick and our wounded, unsupervised. She was supervised, Elder Elric said from the crowd's edge. One sentence not loud but clear. Luna Mari's turned toward him with the slow patience of someone who had prepared for interruption. Elder Elric, you are a valued member of this pack, but your affection for your assistant has made you, a pause carefully weighted, perhaps too generous in your assessment of her capabilities. Elric's jaw tightened, he did not speak again. Tabitha watched him absorb the dismissal and understood. He had no authority to override the Luna. Saying more would only invite the same soft destruction turned on him, and he was old, and Silver Ridge was the only home he had left. She would not have him spend it defending her. She looked back to the platform. Luna Mari's was watching her now, directly, perhaps expecting the silence to break her, expecting tears or protest or the satisfying spectacle of collapse. Tabitha looked back at her steadily and said nothing. The Luna's mouth thinned. Then she reached into the fold of her sleeve and produced a small clay shard, a piece of one of the broken jars from the hut floor, the interior surface visibly darkened. The contamination is evident. Anyone who doubts it may examine this themselves. She held it up for the crowd. This is what she has given us. A low sound from the assembled wolves, the kind of sound that meant the crowd was beginning to settle in one direction. Tabitha's eyes moved without her choosing it, pulled sideways eastward. The tall man was looking at her. Not at the platform, not at the Luna, at her, directly and without any attempt to appear otherwise. She held the eye contact for 1 second before looking away. The warmth returned, that same pressure behind her sternum she had noticed at the gate, more distinct now. A pull, faint and persistent, like a compass needle that hadn't been asked for its opinion. She pressed it down. Not now, not relevant. She brought her attention back to the platform, where Luna Maris was completing her performance. For the safety of Silver Ridge, the Luna said, I am ordering this woman removed from Pack territory before nightfall. Her quarters will be cleared. Her access to the healing hut is revoked immediately. She looked down at Tabitha with something that had finally stopped pretending to be justice. You were never one of us. Today simply makes it official. The words were designed to land. Tabitha felt them. She would not pretend otherwise, not even to herself. 12 years, one sentence to erase them. She was still standing. Then movement at her collarbone. The cord around her neck had shifted when the guards jostled her from the hut. The pendant had slipped free from beneath her linen collar and now rested against her chest in plain sight, a small piece of silver, charred at one edge, a shape pressed into its center that she had never been able to fully read. She did not reach to hide it. From the eastern edge of the courtyard she heard nothing, but she felt precisely, and without explanation, the moment the tall man's gaze moved from her face to the pendant at her throat. And did not move away. Cold wind brushed her face as the courtyard fell silent. Not the silence of indifference, the silence of a crowd that had just watched something tip past the point of comfort and did not yet know whether to step forward or back. Tabitha did not move to hide the pendant. She had kept it concealed for 12 years, tucked beneath collars pressed against her sternum, a private thing she carried the way other people carried grief. She had never shown it deliberately, had never used it as argument or shield. But she had not dropped it into hiding the moment eyes found it either. It lay against her linen collar, small and silver, charred along one edge, a pressed shape at its center worn smooth by years of her thumb running across it in the dark. She did not know what it meant. She only knew it was hers, the one object that had survived whatever life she'd had before Silver Ridge, and she would not perform shame about it for an audience. Luna Maris had not noticed it yet. She was still on the platform, arranging her verdict with the satisfied precision of someone who had rehearsed this. By the authority of Silver Ridge, the Luna said, I am ordering immediate removal. The guards will escort her to the eastern boundary before. She treated my son. The voice came from the left side of the crowd, a woman broad-shouldered with the calloused hands of a tanner. Her name was Petra. Tabitha had sutured her son's leg wound 2 winters ago, a bad one, deep enough that infection had already started. She had sat with him through 2 nights. Luna Maris paused. She sat with him 4 days, Petra said, not loudly, but the silence carried it, never asked for anything. One voice, that was all, but the crowd shifted slightly, that small collective adjustment of people who had been leaning one direction and felt the floor move. Luna Maris' eyes swept the crowd with the cold efficiency of someone cataloguing threats. Petra, her voice was silk over stone. I understand loyalty, but sentiment does not override pack safety. She let it settle, then turned back to the guards. Remove her. Tabitha straightened. I request elder authority review before expulsion, she said. Pack law allows it. Luna Maris turned to look at her, slowly, the way someone turns when they want the turning itself to communicate something. Elder Elric, the Luna's voice did not rise. Do you invoke authority review? Elric stepped forward. His hands, Tabitha noticed, were trembling slightly, age or anger she could not tell. He opened his mouth. Elder Elric, softer this time, a warning wearing courtesy's clothes, consider carefully. The old man's jaw closed. He looked at Tabitha. His eyes said everything his voice wasn't permitted to say. I'm sorry, I have nothing left to spend. She gave him the smallest nod. I know, sit down. He stepped back. Then it is settled, Luna Maris gestured to the guards. Take her to that pendant. The voice came from the eastern edge of the courtyard. Not loud, not commanding in any performed sense, just present, the kind of voice that occupied space without asking permission to do so, the kind that did not need volume because it had never needed it. Everything stopped. Tabitha turned toward the sound without meaning to. The tall man had moved forward from the eastern edge, not far, perhaps 6 steps, but enough that he was no longer at the crowd's margin. He was looking at her collarbone, at the pendant. The wolves nearest him had created space without appearing to notice they were doing it. a ripple of instinctive deference moving outward from his position like water disturbed at the centre. Luna Maris recovered first. "My lord," she stepped down from the platform edge, her voice rearranging itself into welcome. "We are honoured by your visit. This matter is a minor internal." "That pendant," he said it again, same tone, not a repetition for her benefit, a continuation of his own thought. His eyes had not moved from it. "Where did she get it?" Luna Maris blinked. This was not the shape of conversation she had prepared for. "She arrived with it." The Luna's voice held its composure through visible effort. "Years ago, we never investigated its origin. She is wolfless of no particular." "Show me." He was looking at Tabitha now. Not at the Luna, not at the crowd. At her, the same direct attention she had registered before, carrying no performance in either direction, no intimidation offered, no apology for the directness. He simply looked at her the way someone looks at a thing they intend to understand. The warmth at her sternum sharpened. Not pain, the opposite of pain, which made it worse in a way because she had no framework for it. A deep, specific pressure, as though something that had been compressed for a very long time was pressing outward from inside her ribs. She ignored it. She lifted the pendant from her collar and held it out at the end of its cord. She did not step toward him. She did not shrink. Something moved across his face, gone before she could name it. The man beside him, lighter built with a strategist's watchful eyes and road dust still on his collar, leaned close and said something low near his ear. The tall man did not respond to it. He was still looking at the pendant. Luna Maris stepped forward. "My lord, this disruption is unnecessary. The matter is already—" "Stop." One word. The guards, who had been moving toward Tabitha, stopped. Luna Maris stopped. The crowd stopped. And in the silence that followed, full and absolute and ringing, Tabitha felt the cord tremble between her fingers. Not from her hand. From something that had no name yet. The metallic scent of armour filled the air as boots approached her. Not the guards. The guards had not moved since that single word had nailed them in place. Him. He crossed the courtyard with the unhurried pace of someone who had never once needed to rush toward a thing to claim authority over it. The crowd parted without being asked. Tabitha watched the space open around him, wolves stepping back, eyes dropping, shoulders curving inward, the way tall grass bends before wind that has not yet arrived. He stopped 4 feet from her. Up close, the scar through his left eyebrow was more distinct. His eyes were dark, the particular shade of obsidian that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. He was looking at the pendant in her outstretched hand, and whatever he saw there had pulled something tight in his jaw. She kept her arm steady. "You're named," he said. "Tabitha Clearwater. How long have you carried this?" "Since before I can clearly remember." His eyes moved from the pendant to her face. The assessment was direct and impersonal, the look of someone measuring truth, not performing interest. "Where did you come from?" "I don't know." She said it without apology, without the flinching qualification she had once attached to that answer as a girl. "I arrived at Silver Ridge's eastern border at 12 years old. My records were lost in a fire. I have worked here since." Something in his expression shifted, not softened, something more precise than that, recalibrated. "My lord," Luna Maris had recovered her footing and was moving toward them, her voice reconstructed into careful deference. "This woman has been found responsible for contaminating pack supplies. The investigation is complete." "What investigation?" The man beside Warwick spoke for the first time. He had positioned himself slightly to the left, the strategic placement of someone whose role was to see what the principal missed. His voice was calm and almost pleasant. "I heard an accusation. I didn't hear an investigation." Luna Maris turned to him. "And you are?" "Rowan Blackthorne." He said it the way people state facts that require no further decoration. "Royal Beater of the Northern Territories." He tilted his head slightly. "The investigation, walk me through it." The Luna's composure held, but only just. The evidence was visually apparent, the contaminated supplies. "Which supplies specifically?" "The juniper remedies." "Sealed or unsealed when you found them?" A pause, brief, but Tabitha measured it. "The jar was broken." "Before or after you entered the hut?" Luna Maris stopped. Rowan waited with the patient expression of someone who had all afternoon. The jar was all ready. The Luna's jaw tightened. The contamination was evident to anyone present. I wasn't present, Rowan said pleasantly, so I'm asking. He looked past the Luna toward the 2 pack members who had followed her into the hut, Dana and Ferris still at the crowd's edge. You were there. Which of you saw the contamination before the jar broke? Dana's face had gone the color of chalk. Ferris looked at the Luna, then at the ground. Neither spoke. Tabitha watched the crowd register this. The shift was quieter than Petra's single comment had been, but deeper, the particular discomfort of witnesses realizing they may have been watching the wrong thing the wrong way. The tall man, she still did not know his name, had not been given it, had not looked away from her pendant. May I? He extended one hand, open, patient. She looked at his hand, then at his face. She placed the pendant in his palm. The cord went slack between them for one moment, both of them holding it, his fingers beneath hers releasing. The warmth that had been sitting at the base of her sternum all afternoon moved suddenly, sharply upward. She felt it in her throat, in her fingertips. She stepped back. He examined the pendant without speaking, turned it once, ran his thumb across the pressed shape at its center, the same gesture she had made 10,000 times in private, and went very still. This crest, he said quietly, not to her, not to anyone specifically. My lord, Luna Maris' voice had shed its deference entirely now, gone to something harder underneath. Whatever that object is, it does not change what this woman has done. She is wolfless, she has no standing. Every wolf has standing under Northern royal law. His voice had not changed in volume or pace, but Luna Maris stopped speaking as though a door had closed. Wolfless status affects rank within a pack. It does not remove legal protection. He looked up from the pendant. That is the law, has been for 3 generations. The Luna's mouth opened, closed. Tabitha felt the crowd's weight shift again, something more significant this time, a collective reorientation. She recognized it from the healing hut, the moment a patient's body decided to stop fighting the remedy. He turned to look at her directly. That pressure again, deeper than before, filling the space between her ribs completely, a warmth that had stopped being dismissible 3 minutes ago. She looked back at him steadily and did not name it, because naming it would require her to stop managing everything else, and she was not finished managing everything else. His eyes moved over her face the way they had moved over the pendant, that same quiet, precise attention. Then something in his jaw changed. The faintest tightening, a recognition she did not understand landing in his expression before he could contain it. This crest, he said again, and this time he said it to her, holding the pendant up so she could see clearly the shape pressed into the silver, belongs to the royal Northern bloodline. Luna Maris made a sound. Tabitha looked at the pendant, then at him. That's not possible, she said. He did not disagree with her. Her fingers trembled against the cool silver pressed into her palm. He had returned the pendant without ceremony, placed it back into her hand, cord and all, and closed her fingers around it once with a brief pressure before releasing. The contact lasted 2 seconds. The warmth it left behind was not brief at all. She looked down at the crest. She had traced it 10,000 times. In the dark, in the cold, in every moment she needed to remember that she had come from somewhere, even if she could not name where. She knew its shape the way she knew her own breathing, the overlapping lines, the small raised point at the upper left corner, the worn smoothness at the center where her thumb always went. She had never known what it meant. The Nightshade lineage, he said quietly, marks its royal-blooded members at birth with that crest. On silver, specific weight, specific alloy. This, he did not touch it again, is not a reproduction. Tabitha looked up at him. I'm a healer's assistant, she said. I grind herbs, I pack wounds. Yes, his voice held no contradiction, and before that. I don't know before that. His eyes stayed on her face. That particular steadiness, not patience exactly, more like the quality of someone who had already reached a conclusion, and was simply waiting for the information to arrive at the same place. Around them, the courtyard had gone the specific silence of a crowd that had stopped breathing correctly. Luna Maris broke it first. This is fabricated. Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone who had identified the threat and was moving to contain it. The pendant is old, worn, anyone could have come by it, found it, stolen it. Stolen it from whom? Rowan asked from his position slightly left and behind. He had not moved since his questioning of Dana and Ferris. He did not need to move. His stillness was its own argument. If it belongs to the royal bloodline, name the member who lost it. Luna Maris opened her mouth. Closed it. The alloy is verifiable, the tall man said, still looking at Tabitha. The crest pattern is documented in the Northern Territorial records. Both can be confirmed within the hour. He paused. Her age matches the time frame of a missing bloodline member reported to the royal court 14 years ago. The ground did not shift beneath Tabitha's feet. It only felt that way. 14 years ago. She had been 10, 2 years before the fire, 2 years before she arrived at Silver Ridge's eastern border carrying nothing but a charred pendant and no explanation for either. She pressed the silver against her palm until the edge bit in slightly. Real, present, manageable. If you are feeling what Tabitha is feeling right now, that dizzying collision of a life rearranging itself, stay with this channel because the next 2 chapters will deliver everything this moment is promising. Subscribe now. And tell me in the comments, did you see this coming or did it hit you like it hit her? She is wolfless, Luna Maris said, quieter now, choosing the ground carefully. Royal bloodline carries active wolf gifts. If she had that blood, she would have shifted by. Suppressed shifting occurs in royal-blooded wolves removed from pack territory before their first moon cycle. He said it without looking at the Luna. Information delivered to Tabitha directly, as though the Luna were simply weather happening nearby. The wolf does not die, it waits. Tabitha's chest moved with a slow breath. She had spent 12 years carrying the particular shame of being wolfless in a world that sorted its entire hierarchy around that fact, had absorbed it as truth, had built her value around everything she could do without it, the skill, the knowledge, the hours, the quiet presence in a room where someone was suffering. She did not know what to do with this. She knew what she would not do. She would not collapse into it, would not perform gratitude before a crowd that had watched her be humiliated 40 minutes ago and said almost nothing. Whatever this information meant, it was hers to hold first, privately, before it became anyone else's narrative. She lifted her chin. What happens now? He looked at her, a flicker of something she still could not fully read crossing his expression. Now, he said, you are under royal protection. No pack authority supersedes that. Luna Maris stepped forward. My lord, her voice had reclaimed its silk, but underneath it Tabitha could hear the structure starting to fracture. Even if the pendant is verified, even if there is some distant bloodline connection, this woman contaminated pack supplies. That accusation stands regardless of her origin. Does it? Rowan again, still pleasant, still immovable. He had produced a small leather document folio from inside his riding coat. Tabitha had not seen him retrieve it, which meant he had been holding it ready. Because I have the supply records Tabitha mentioned when the accusation was first made. Dana. He looked toward the crowd's edge. You were in the hut this morning, before the Luna arrived. What were the jar's condition then? Dana's face had moved past chalk into something approaching decision. A long moment. Sealed, she said. The word came out barely above a whisper, then stronger. They were sealed, all of them. The crowd's silence changed again. Not the silence of people watching, the silence of people arriving somewhere they hadn't expected to arrive. Luna Maris turned toward Dana with an expression that promised consequences later in private, where no royal beater could document them. Tabitha watched the Luna's face and understood, with the cold clarity that had always been her best tool, that this was not over, that a woman who had built her authority on hierarchy and performance would not simply absorb this without response. She was right. She has bewitched him. Luna Maris turned back to the crowd, abandoning the careful register entirely now, going for something rower. Look at him. She arrived here wolfless and unknown, and within 1 hour a royal lord is standing in our courtyard defending her. Ask yourselves why. The crowd stirred. He did not look at the Luna. He looked at Tabitha, and for the first time something in his expression was not contained, not a performance, just present and steady and certain in a way that asked nothing back from her. It was the most frightening thing she had seen all day. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through leaves. Not from the bewitchment accusation. From what came after it. He turned to face Luna Maris for the first time since entering the courtyard. Fully, the unhurried, complete turn of someone who had been patient long enough and had now decided to stop. The crowd felt it before he spoke. Tabitha watched the ripple move outward from his position, wolves straightening, eyes lifting, the particular alertness of a pack registering that the dominant in the space had shifted his attention and nothing would be the same afterward. Luna Maris held her ground. Tabitha gave her that. Bewitchment, he said, flat, not a question, not even contempt, something quieter and more final than contempt. That is your argument. The evidence speaks. Rowan, he said the name without looking away from the Luna. Rowan opened the document folio. He had clearly been waiting for precisely this moment. Supply records countersigned by Elder Elric confirming sealed inventory as of this morning's 4th bell. He held them up not theatrically, just visibly. Signed in Tabitha Clearwater's hand and verified in the Elder's. He produced a second document. Testimony from Dana, pack member, confirming sealed jars before the Luna's arrival at the hut. A third. Inventory from the previous 3 seasons, showing no contamination incidents during Tabitha Clearwater's tenure as healer's assistant. He placed all 3 documents together and held them without further comment. The crowd looked at the documents, then at Luna Maris. Contamination requires a source, Rowan said, still pleasant, still immovable. These records suggest the contamination, if any occurred, predates this morning's accusation, which raises an interesting question about who benefited from the timing. Luna Maris' composure was intact, just. I am the Luna of Silver Ridge, she said. My authority in this territory is subordinate to royal law. He said it without volume, as it has always been. Tabitha watched the Luna's face move through something private and rapid, calculation, assessment, retreat, the selection of a final position. She recognized it. She had seen it in the healing hut when a patient's body finally accepted that a wound was worse than they'd told themselves. You have no proof of wrongdoing on my part, Luna Maris said, quieter now, choosing every word. Not yet, Rowan said. The 2 words landed with the weight of a door left open. If you have been waiting for this moment, if you have been holding your breath since Chapter 1, you were right to wait. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss Chapter 7 where Tabitha speaks her first command. Drop a comment and tell me, what do you want her to say? He turned back to Tabitha. She had not moved from the position she had held since being forced into the courtyard. Same ground, same posture. She was acutely aware of the pendant in her closed fist, the slight bite of the silver edge, the realness of it. Tabitha Clearwater. He said her name with the same directness he applied to everything else, no performance, no ceremony, just the name and his full attention behind it. The accusations made against you this morning are dismissed. Your access to the healing hut is restored. Your position in this pack is protected under royal authority pending full lineage verification. He paused. I also owe you a name. I did not offer it. Something in his expression shifted, not quite apology, but its functional equivalent from a man who did not appear to make them often. Warwick Nightshade, High Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The crowd's silence had a texture now, dense and total. Tabitha looked at him. Nightshade, the same lineage marked on her pendant. She turned that over once privately and set it aside for later when she had walls around her and no 40 witnesses watching her face for a reaction. Thank you, she said, steady, plain, not performed. He held her gaze for a moment, longer than the exchange required. Then to the crowd, and his voice carried without effort across the entire courtyard, reaching every edge and corner without him appearing to raise it. Silver Ridge has today witnessed a lawful member of this pack subjected to public accusation without evidence, denied legal process, and ordered expelled without investigation. This is a violation of Northern Pack law. It will be reviewed. Every wolf present today is a witness to that review. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Rowan was writing something in the folio. Luna Maris stood on the platform she had used to conduct Tabitha's public humiliation, and the platform was the same stone, and the crowd was the same wolves, and the courtyard was the same courtyard, but the geometry of all of it had rearranged entirely around her. She understood this. Tabitha could see the precise moment she understood it. You cannot do this, the Luna said, quietly, only for him. "It is already done," he said. He turned back to Tabitha then, and what crossed his face was not triumph and not performance. It was the expression of a man who had done the correct thing and found, to his own apparent surprise, that doing it had cost him nothing and returned him something he had not expected to recover in a Silver Ridge courtyard on an ordinary afternoon. The crowd knelt. Not all at once, it moved in a wave from the front outward, wolves dropping to one knee as the weight of what they had witnessed settled into its final shape. Petra went first, then Elric, then Dana, still pale, with something on her face that was closer to relief than submission. Tabitha stood, the only one standing besides him. He did not ask her to kneel, he did not look at her as though she should. The scent of polished stone and burning resin filled the royal hall. Tabitha had never stood inside it before. Healer's assistants did not receive invitations to the royal hall. She noted the irony without dwelling on it. There were more useful things to do with the next few minutes than dwell. The hall was long and high-ceilinged, its stone walls hung with territorial banners in deep green and iron grey. Torches burned in bracketed rows, throwing warm light across the assembled wolves. Silver Ridge's full-ranking membership, called here within the hour by Rowan's quiet, efficient authority. They stood in two facing lines, leaving a corridor of open stone between them. At the far end, a raised platform, not the courtyard's rough ceremonial edge, a proper dais with a carved stone chair that nobody was sitting in. Warwick stood beside it. He had changed from travelling leathers into something that suited the hall's formality, darker, with the Northern Territorial crest at his collar. It was the first time she had seen him in his full authority's clothing, and the difference was not in how he looked, but in how the room organised itself around him. Every wolf in the hall was aware of exactly where he was without appearing to look directly at him. Tabitha walked the corridor between the assembled wolves. She was still in her worn linen and leather. She had not been offered time to change and would not have asked for it. She was not going to perform a transformation for an audience. If Silver Ridge wanted to acknowledge who she was, they could do it while looking at what she had always been. Rowan fell into step beside her at the hall's entrance. He had been doing this all afternoon, appearing at useful moments without announcing himself, which she suspected was not accidental. "You're steady," he said quietly, not a compliment exactly, an observation. "I've had practice," she said. Something at the corner of his mouth moved. They walked. She reached the dais and stopped. Warwick looked at her, that same direct attention, but here inside four walls with the crowd narrowed to two lines and the torchlight finding everything, it was harder to set aside. The warmth in her chest was constant now, no longer arriving in waves but simply present, like a fire that had decided to stay. She stood with it, she did not name it yet. Tabitha Clearwater. His voice reached every corner of the hall without effort. Born of the Nightshade royal bloodline, removed from Northern Territory before your first moon cycle, carried here by circumstances this court will fully investigate. He paused. You have spent 12 years in this pack as its lowest-ranked member. You have healed its sick, sat with its wounded, and earned skill that no rank was ever offered in return for. The hall was perfectly silent. Silver Ridge's treatment of you this morning violated Northern Pack law. That violation is formally recorded. He looked past her briefly, to where Luna Mari stood at the far edge of the assembled wolves, still and diminished in a way that had nothing to do with her posture. Luna Mari's Valewood is hereby stripped of her title and authority, pending full legal review of this morning's conduct, and any prior actions this investigation reveals. A sound moved through the hall, not protest, something closer to a collective exhale, the sound of a truth arriving that many had known for longer than today. Luna Mari said nothing, her face said enough. Tabitha filed it away and kept her eyes forward. If you have stayed with Tabitha through every chapter of this story, through every insult, every silence, every moment she chose dignity over collapse, then you already know why this moment matters. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me, what did Tabitha teach you about surviving with your spine intact? By Northern royal law, Warwick continued, your lineage entitles you to full pack standing, rank restoration and formal acknowledgement before witnesses. He looked at her directly now, not at the crowd, not at the record Rowan was keeping, at her. But there is something beyond law that I am required to address in this hall, before these witnesses. She felt it before he said it. The warmth moved through her entire chest in one long, slow wave, not sharp, not startling. The feeling of something enormous settling into its correct position after a very long time in the wrong one. The mate bond, he said, does not observe rank or timing or convenience. I have felt its direction for years without finding its source. Something in his jaw shifted, that same private recalibration she had been watching all afternoon, finally allowed to be visible. I found it today, in a courtyard, while someone was trying to expel you from a pack that never deserved you. The hall did not move. Tabitha looked at him for a long moment. You could have led with that, she said. Something shifted in his expression, startled and then briefly and completely warm. I could have, he said. You were busy. I was. She held the pendant in her closed hand. Then she opened her fingers and looked at it one final time. The worn silver, the crest she now had a name for, the charred edge that had survived whatever fire had taken everything else. She had carried it as a question for 12 years. She closed her hand around it again, not an answer, and beginning. She turned to face the assembled hall. Every wolf watching, every wolf who had stood in the courtyard this morning and said nothing, and some who had, and Elric at the front with his hands finally still. The healing hut, she said, needs a full inventory audit. I want it completed by tomorrow's second bell. She looked at Dana, who startled and then nodded quickly. And someone needs to reseal the juniper supply, properly this time. A breath moved through the hall, surprised and then not. Behind her, she heard Warwick go to one knee. Not as a king. As a mate. She did not turn around yet. She gave herself 3 more seconds of standing in her own name, in her own voice, in the hall that had never been opened to her before today. Then she turned.
She walked into that courtyard as a stray. She walked out as a mate, an heir, and the only person in Silver Ridge who already knew which wolves to trust because she counted them. If this story found you at the right moment, subscribe and tell me in the comments, which wolf would you have been?